So now that I've got the power steering hoses connected, it's time to see about fitting the headers in this gap. I've got 1 3/4 tube stainless steel headers from American Racing, and it might be a tight fit, so I think it's going to be best. These are pretty heavy. I don't want to crack the porcelain on the spark plugs, so I'm going to remove the spark plugs before I try to put this in. I think normally whenever you buy headers, it's recommended to try to install them from the bottom, but you need to lift the car fairly high in order to get ground clearance. I don't have the ability right now, unless I do some playing around with the body on the lift, of lifting this chassis up high enough to do that. So I am going to try to go against convention and take the headers and put them in from the top. I don't know how well that's going to work. I may run into a problem with it. These spark plugs were just put in, by the way, to keep stuff out while I worked on it. I hadn't tightened them. So and I had this tape over the ports from the head for the same reason. So obviously that can come off. One of the first things I noticed when I opened the box with the headers is they came with gaskets, but I also had gaskets from the Felpro kit from the engine rebuild. These, if you look at them, the ports that came, or the gaskets that came with the headers are slightly larger, but I matched these up to the heads, and these exactly match the heads. So I'm going to go with these. These also have the advantage on the end of having this, where I can actually put the header in without having to hold this, put one bolt on each end to hold the header up, and then slip this gasket over it without any problem. Can't do that with this. And putting the headers on, I would have to hold the header and the gasket, line it up to the head. So I'm going with the Felpro gasket. Let's see what we can do here. Sure, these gaskets or these headers weren't designed with Orgeson steering gear in. So might be a little tricky. I might have to take this, it's the oil pressure sending unit. I might have to take that out in order to get around that, because let's try this. Know what's in the way right now is the hose I moved yesterday on the steering gear. I think if I take that off, I may be able to get this in without taking off that sending unit. But wait, just tilt it another way. Awesome. Now, here's where I think this Velcro gasket's going to be a godsend, because I can put a bolt there, bolt here, got those started. I like it so far, I like it. I'm going to zoom that out just a little bit so you can see the end of the header. So, I did not bring the wrench over to do this, but the point is I can slip that Velcro gasket in there, catch it on these two bolts, there and there, and now I can start the rest of the bolts. Okay, as usual, these are tough. Might have to bang that in with a dead blow hammer to get it through the... If that doesn't work, just nicking the edge of the taking a grinder. Just taking the edge off of the flange on the bolt. I mean, it's very little, but just not taking that off a bit will make it go on. Looks like they dinged the pipe here, or bent it to be more square, but not quite enough. I have to see if I can get a socket on that, and maybe it will thread in and get past the point of interference. I will zoom in on that so you can see better what's happening here. That right there won't go in because of the angle there. Wait a minute. I was able to turn that a little bit with my fingers even. There we go. Very tight fit, but made it. Okay. 2 more bolts to put in. One here. One here. But before I do that, I'm going to go get the correct socket so that I don't have to play around with it at the car. They're 12 point. So I will be back shortly. So the socket I need is a 3/8 inch. I'm using a 1/4 inch drive because that socket is no bigger in diameter than the flange on the bolt. Now, I'm going to start this one first. It's the last one to be started. But the first one I'm going to tighten is going to be the one with the interference issues, and I think I have interference issues right here too. Yeah, that's going to be tough to get that in. Tough to even get a socket in there. So let's see what's going on here. Now I can wiggle it a little bit. Again, if I can't get it in, I might have to resort to taking a little piece of that flange off to just give it a little more clearance. But what I'm going to do is once I get these on, I'm going to tighten these first. The 2 with clearance issues, because I can hold my extension is too long. I can hold the manifold out so that I can get this onto the head of the bolt better. Okay, I ended up taking this back off and took it over to the bench and actually gave this a very gentle tap with a dead blow hammer to get that to go in. And knowing now how little of an effort it was, I think I would have just done it on the car. But this is an opportunity for me to better show you what I had to do to insert this header up through the parts here. And the key to it was essentially tilting the header so that the exhaust was way over further than where it would have been. Came out easy. Now, I know that I can get this in because I put it in and taken it out. So there, my hose was a little bit in the way. So I'm going to get me a bolt here and start the back end of it. Just a few threads to hold it up while I put the gasket in and start those other 2 bolts. Now that that's held up, I can go do the front end. It still might be kind of a problem to get the wrench on these two. If I can't get them, I can go try to find the same thread bolt with a similar head, but a Allen wrench drive, so that the Allen wrench should be much thinner than the socket, having to get the socket in there. So there the gasket is in. I'm going to start these two bolts. And before I put the passenger side header on, I'm going to try to see if I can get that's still an issue getting that wrench in there. There's no way to get a box end wrench in there. That's bigger than this socket, I believe. I guess I could turn them with vice grips, but that's going to be a slow process. Let me see if I have a better tool to get into that close quarters there. So I found a 3/8 inch stubby wrench. I actually got it in on one, but if I grind down the edge of this, or maybe the top of this a little bit, I'll be able to get it in there and work with it. So I'm going to look at my other wrenches to see if I find one that's got a little thinner thing. I may be able to get something in there by trying them all. But if not, I'm probably going to grind this down a little bit, because how often do you use a 3/8 and how tight does a 3/8 bolt need to be? So I think I can modify the wrench and get those on without any problem. Okay, I found two wrenches. I have a Sears brand, and I compared the amount of material on there to the one I had, and it seems like it's smaller. And I also have a Craftsman brand, Craftsman 3/8, and that seems smaller. So I think one of those will fit, since I was so close on the other ones. So if this works, then the lesson for everybody is check your toolbox for different wrenches. That one went in. One goes there too. Let's try the Craftsman. Craftsman will go on, but it's harder to do. I'm going to work with the Sears as long as I can. It has an offset too. It might help in clearance between the valve cover. So, it's probably going to be a slow process, but I'm going to do a couple turns on each one, alternating, so that I don't get to a point where one of them is in, but the other one that has caused this bolt to be pushed out further up against the manifold. So I'm going to do like 2 turns on each one till I get them in, and then I'll tighten them all up. There's no sense in me wasting your time videoing this because it's going to be a long process. But the thing is, I've already shown you what the process is going to be. I'll just put these other 2 remaining bolts in. I do have my gasket back in there. Since I took it out, it's a good thing to check to make sure you've got it back in. And then I'll shut off the video, and I can actually listen to some music while I'm doing this. Okay, I got those 2 in nice and tight. Took a little bit, but now that those 2 are tightened, I can tighten the rest and pull the, thought that might happen. I have a very little, looks like almost a 1-inch extension here for my 1/4-inch socket. And I think I need that to clear the Borgeson unit. So it took a little bit doing those, you know, maybe 1/3 of a turn at a time, which I've had worse situations. I've had it where it was 1/8 of a turn, 1/6 of a turn. Got to remember these are aluminum manifolds, or not manifolds, heads. I don't want to strip those screws, so I need them to be tight, but they don't need to be He-Man tight. Probably a good thing. I'm probably not capable of that anymore. And once I get these last couple bolts tightened, I'll show you what else came in the box for the other side, or for each side, I should say. There's a flange that is going to connect to the exhaust pipe, and I have 2.5-inch exhaust, and that's what these flanges are. I hope. At least that's what this was supposed to be. If not, I'll get a reducer. I need a little bit of a pipe in between there and the pipe's exhaust anyway. So whatever. I'm going to measure that because at a quick glance it looks pretty big. So that might be only 2.5 inches. Okay, so that tightens up the headers, and if you notice there's a paper on the end that seals that up. I'm going to leave that up on there so nothing can get in it. But also what comes is a little pipe with a bung in it for an oxygen sensor, which I'm going to need because of having the sniper fuel injection. And then it's got a clamp. I'll have to loosen this to fit it around it. It's not going to go without being loosened. But that connects to a similar flange like this on the end of the tailpipe, the header pipe. And For the sniper unit, I need to have this at least 10 degrees, if I recall correctly, from horizontal facing up. So anywhere beyond that is good for the life of your oxygen sensor, according to Holley Sniper. So I'm going to move the camera to the other side, and I'm going to put the other side header on. But before I try to put it on, I'm going to check the fit of those bolts to see if any need to be kind of started first to save myself the issues I had on this side. At a quick glance, it looks like it's going to be really easy on that side because I'm not dealing with the Borgeson steering gear. Also included in the box was a couple decals advertising American Racing headers. I don't know, I don't see very many people who aren't actually professional running decals all over their cars. So I've got decals from the transmission, the headers, the fuel injection, the manifold, Summit Racing, QA1, I forget the brand name again of the rear suspension kit. I've got all kinds of decals. I may make a board to take to car cruises and car shows that has just all these decals that I've got stuck on it, just to point out everything that I've got on this car. I'll see, that'll be a project for later. Okay, one last thing to do on this side I almost forgot, but when I went over on the other side, I was looking at what I have to do over there. I saw the spark plugs. So I've got to put these spark plugs back in. Just to keep stuff out. I can actually tighten these in now. Looks like, at least on that one, I'm going to have plenty of room for my spark plug boot. That's sometimes a problem with headers. So been debating whether to put the power steer or the alternator bracket and alternator on. Before I put the engine or the body on the chassis. One of the things that was always an issue, these valve covers are tall valve covers because the camshaft that was in there had a higher lift than stock. I didn't know that until I took it apart, but by that time I had already committed to going to roller cam. It turns out it's the same lift as the cam I took out, but the fact that it's roller will be an improvement. So at any rate, I was talking about the tall valve covers and the alternator. You had to take the valve cover off in order to change the alternator belt. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can put the alternator on and get a larger belt so that I can actually change it without removing the valve covers. Not that that's that big of a deal, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to go get a spark plug wrench and tighten those up. Usually whenever you're working with spark plugs, it takes a variety of extensions before you get all of them tightened or loosened. I think that's going to be the case here. I tried to put the socket on the front one, and looks like I'm going to need an extension to clear the header. The other ones I'm not sure about. Now, typically on these Corvettes, occasionally, or not occasionally, usually, you need to go underneath to get these last two, because you don't have room to get the socket on. And tighten it with all the other stuff that's going to be here. This looks like it's going to go on, but it looks like I've got to put the socket on and then insert the wrench. Might need a swivel there. I don't like using swivels on spark plugs if I can possibly avoid it, because they have a tendency to slip off, and if you slip off of a spark plug, you're going to break the porcelain off. So I'm going to try it first with a short straight extension, see if that will clear, and then if not, I'll go to the swivel. Okay, I tried putting a short straight socket in there off camera, and it barely got into the you know what, I'm going to show you another trick, better way to do this. Take that off and go get another tool, and I'll be right back. Okay, this is going to be the good way to do it, I'm sure. You notice this has a hex end on it. It's a 3/4 inch. I'm going to put the socket on the spark plug, put the wrench on the socket, and tighten the spark plug. I've actually used offset wrenches like this and done the spark plug itself. I believe it was on my 74. But the challenge here is going to be small turns. That's all I'm going to get on it. So let's see how far we can take this in with just, with the socket on there. It's pretty easy to turn it in by hand. So I'll get it to where I'm just doing the final tightening. Actually, I didn't have that seated all the way on the spark plug, so that was a problem. Now that I've got it in there, and spark plugs don't have to be that tight, especially with aluminum heads. You don't want to over tighten them, strip those out. So I choke up on the wrench, if you will, to get reduce my amount of leverage that I can use. I'll just do this one that way too. Now, one of the things that I found out on this side that I'm going to do on the other side is, I believe it was this thread. I couldn't turn the bolt in with my fingers, so I'm going to run a bolt in on the other side in each of those holes to make sure that I can tighten them with my fingers if necessary, because that made it a little more difficult. I could have turned those in by hand possibly, and wasn't able to because the bolt was being a little bit let's try an extension here on the ratchet. That's a little bit offset too. Again, I don't want to force that without a good, without the extension being in the socket well, because if it slips, that's probably going to be a broken spark plug. Okay, those are all in. I like it from the standpoint of I've got angled boots on the exhaust, on the, not the exhaust, the spark plug bars. So they should go on there nicely and be far away from the headers. I like the way that fit. So that's it for this side. I'm going to go over to the other side. For the passenger side, there's a couple other little issues to deal with. Number one, you got the starter motor over here, so that might play into it. But I've got this bracket for the vintage air compressor that gets bolted in through the holes for the exhaust manifold, or the headers in this case. Put these down. I'll be dropping spacers all over the place. So, if you've been following along with this whole project, you remember that my timing chain cover was interfering with the water pump, and I had to get a spacer for the water pump. I put that on, and it meant I had to move every other pulley out 1/8 of an inch. So one of the things that I've got to do for this is to elongate these holes, which is going to take most of that off. But I've got to elongate those holes so that I can move this bracket from the back 1/8 of an inch forward, so that it's positioning the air compressor in line with the belts. So that's a complication on this side. And of course, we've got to take out the spark plugs and get the tape off of the exhaust ports that was on there to keep stuff from getting in there. And as I said, and I'm going to do this off camera, but as I said before, I was having difficulty threading in one of those bolts by hand. So I'm going to take a bolt and run it into each one of these holes before I start. The third and the first I don't have to worry about, because they're going to be long bolts from the vintage air bracket for the compressor, so those two I don't have to worry about running an exhaust header bolt in. not too concerned about, there's not going to be much left on that now. The bracket, when I elongate the holes, I'm not much worried about that because the bolts will hold it in. And really any movement I'm concerned about would be up and down rather than back and forth. So I'm not shaving anything off of it from up and down. So off camera, I am going to run some bolts into those holes just to make sure that they'll go in easily by hand. So while I'm down in this area, I'm going to put the ground wire between the frame, which goes onto the motor mount here, and the engine. I'm trying to figure out how it goes, because for some reason the bend in it doesn't appear to be like the bend it needs to make. And I've got to make it so that both of the flats are up against the frame and the engine. Flat part of the cable. I'll have to bend that around. I believe that's the bolt that it goes to. I get them both started first before I tighten either one of them. Better make sure that's the right place. Maybe that's why the bolts don't go. That could be a water jacket drain plug. If that's the case, I don't want to remove it. It does look like it's a very big thread. It looks more like a plug than a bolt. This might go into a bolt at the motor mount. fit in that motor mount bolt. I don't see any other bolt holes here other than the starter bracket that it could go to, but that's not quite long enough. That would ground it though. Maybe I need to go back and look at my videos and decide where I took it off of. It's one of the reasons why I decided to video this whole process in the first place, because if I ever got stumped on how something went in, I could check it. Okay, not doing anything with that right now. I'm going to see how the header on this side fits. That one's going to go on pretty easy. I've got to get that one wire out of the way though. That's from the starter solenoid. This is not the bolt that actually goes in this place. That's going to be one of those bolts that holds the air conditioner bracket on. But for holding it in place, it'll work. And holding the gasket in place. So that went in really easy. And as I said, all the bolts are straight shot in. This one could be a problem if the power steering or the air conditioning bracket needs to go there. Those are pretty long bolts. I can't get the spacers I put on just to hold it in place. Can't get the spacers off the bolts. I'm going to have to somehow figure out how to get those out of there. Gonna shut off the camera and go away a bit while I take that off. Okay, the modification to the air conditioning compressor bracket just became more complex because bolt they give you for it won't go into the hole in the back. Front one should probably be okay. spacer on it, but there's clearance to get this one in. That one will go. And I'm afraid that if I get a shorter bolt, I already tried one shorter one, but it was way too short. But if I get a shorter bolt to fit in between here and get into that hole, I'm not sure how much grip I'm going to get into the head. So as of right this minute, I'm going to look into that, because my solution might be to use a shorter bolt there. Cut this bracket here and weld in a piece going this way and weld this piece back onto it so that I have an offset. That might be what I have to do, but it's not going to be as simple as I thought. Sometimes you need to lose your guy card and look at some directions. I'm not saying I'm following them. I'm just saying I think I found myself a solution other than grinding these, elongating these holes. And here's why. It would appear that this bolt goes through that and the back of the compressor right there, and this bolt that holds the front on, check that, make that this bolt that holds the front on, goes through a couple of brackets and that bracket. But the key point in here is that front bolt or bolt hole for the compressor sits in front of this bracket. So I thought that one bolt was going to go all the way through. So what I can do is put a spacer between this bracket and the compressor here to move it up 1/8 of an inch, and then put a spacer between this bracket and this bolt hole on the compressor, and this one too, to move the compressor out 1/8 of an inch, and everything will be cool. So that solves that problem. The next issue that I had was not being able to get a bolt through here. Well, the bolt they gave me was 3.5 inches long, and I'm trying to find the spacer that I need for it. There's a 2-inch spacer. There it is. That needs to go between this bracket and the flange on the header. So I think what I can do is this bolt will go in by itself. I haven't tried it with the spacer and the bracket on it, but it will go in by itself from the bottom and go through that hole. So if I can get this bolt through that bracket, and then through this 2-inch spacer, get it to go through that hole, which I had it in without the bracket and the spacer. Took a little playing, but, and it has to have the flame of the bolt right up against the header. And I can't see it because it's upside down, or it's underneath. But right there, you know what's making the difference now is this spacer is hitting up against the header. Maybe not. It is so close to going that I almost want to just take a dead blow hammer and hit it, because it went in before without an issue. It is actually, that spacer is spinning, so that's not the problem. And I'm going to see if I can tap that with a dead blow. At any rate, once that's in there, if I can get it in, I'll have a good 1/2 inch of threads into the block, into the head. It's actually a little bit past the flange of the header already. I can see the tip of the bolt. It's sticking out. And the bolt's turning. Maybe it is that spacer, but I can spin it so it's not actually tight. It is so close to going. I'm going to get a dead blow hammer and a brass drift. Well, I have the dead blow hammer. I'm going to get a brass drift. Moved my toolbox around, looking in the wrong space. Gently try to tap that through. There, it's through. Now all I got to do is I'm going to tighten up some of the other bolts first, because tightening those up will cause that to line up better. And then I can better show you, I think, where I need to put spacers on that. Air conditioning bracket. need to go on with a wrench. And that one will need to go on with a wrench. So temporarily, I'm going to put a regular header bolt into the front of the header. The only reason I want to do that is I want to snug this up so that I can better get the air conditioner bracket in. I might need to notch that air conditioner bracket out right here. It looks like it's a little bit out of alignment from that. That's an easier solution, I believe, than some of the other potential solutions. I think that's not the way to go either. I need to loosen this up and get this back bolt started here because it's not straight. And that might line up once it's started. A 1/2 inch smaller bolt here I don't think will work because the 1/2 inch smaller bolt won't get me enough contact or enough threads engaged in the head. So close. I don't like to turn bolts that I don't know are engaged in the thread with a wrench, but I can't grip that, so I'm going to turn it lightly. I'm actually going to use I thought I was going to use a stubby, but I don't have a 9/16 stubby. I have to put those from 1/2 to 5/8. that off while I find my my 9/16 wrench. Taking two. Okay, it was right on top. I don't know why I couldn't see it. Very gently use the wrench on here, and I'm just using it because I cannot turn that with my fingers. My fingers are too big. If I feel any resistance before it's engaged, I'm going to stop. And so far, so good. And yeah, it does look like I'm going to have to take a chunk out of here. I'm wondering if I should try and take that bolt out, or whether I can mark this, put stuff over the engine to protect it, and take a grinding wheel to okay. I think that's how I'm going to have to do it. I don't know about taking that back out of there. It's going to be hard to get out. I guess it wouldn't be bad. I could cut that bolt or grind it off or anything to get it out of the header. I'm going to need a swivel to get to those bolts with a ratchet, or I'm going to have to do it slowly with a wrench. I'll let you know what I did. Okay, two tools I used. The 90-degree handle for the socket worked on the one towards the back. The other one, I don't have it tightened yet. The 90-degree will not work. It worked fine here, but the 90-degree won't work on this one. But now that I've got all these other ones tightened and it aligned, I was able to tighten it in a bit with my fingers, and I'll only have to do a few hits with the wrench. Well, my fingers stopped being strong enough to get it in there, so it's going to be more than a few, but basically same thing I did on the other side. Put the wrench on it. Turn it as hard as you can. Repeat. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to mark how much I need to trim out of this right here. This needs to come down, I don't know, half an inch at most. So I'm thinking because of the angle of this, probably only a quarter inch needs to be trimmed out of there. And as I said, I'm going to throw stuff over the engine to protect everything and make the sparks shoot out away from the engine and just do it on the car. Okay, I decided to use my die grinder on it rather than a grinder per se. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got green tape there to mark off the area I want to take out. So I'm taking out the black part that's towards the right-hand side of your picture. It's the first time I'm using this die grinder. I hear that they throw a lot of shrapnel, so I have Kevlar sleeves and a pair of gloves on. I don't want those sharp pieces embedded in my body. That should lock on, but I decided that I'm going to put ear protection in because it's kind of loud, shrill. It's doing a pretty good job. These are carbide tip bits. Check my progress. Still have a ways to go, but I can see where I've got to go further. tool in the plastic. It's a little warm through the gloves. The tape's not working that well. I need to tighten that bit back in. I'm going to paint this after I get it all trimmed down and where I want it. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit so it doesn't move as much on me. It's being a bit of an issue with it bouncing around on me. Okay, there you have it. The notch is completed. I decided that after I hit that plastic and wrapped it all up in there, I'd just continue to grind without videoing it because he'd seen what I was doing. So there's the notch as it fits around the header. And you'll notice I let this come down further than necessary because when I get it bolted in, finalized, I want to have an air gap between the header and that. You can't see it, but I'm gonna push that down all the way and then raise it up. So that's down all the way. And then obviously when I pull it up on this end, I'm getting a little bit of an air gap right there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this back up, wrap the plastic around it, get out my spray can of Rust-Oleum, give that a shot of paint. Yeah, not even showing you what I'm doing. Anyways, that's upright. I'm going to get the paint out and give it a shot. Oops, there's a hole in the plastic. Can't have that. Can't have anything get on that engine. Okay. Let that dry a bit before I put it down and put the spacer in and put that final bolt into that. So I've got my spacer in here. I'll need one in here before I put the bracket on, or the air compressor on. I'm putting my spacer in my looks like I'm going to need to loosen that a little bit. I think I just put that wrench away. I need to back it off a little bit to get this spacer and bolt in there. Okay, there's my wrench on there. I need to loosen it just a little so that I can get this spacer in, and then that should all be lined up properly. Let's try that now. Yep, that did it. So that bolt now goes through there and through the header and screws into the head. So no idea what that noise is. that feels like it's bottoming out. I need to put a spacer behind that bolt now. I'm not going to strip those bolts, those threads in the head, that's for sure. Or instead of just using a spacer like that, I could put a bolt that matches that one in. Maybe I'll do that. That way they'll at least match. Since they don't match the bolts that came with the kit. I gotta find my spacer. Make sure I'm aimed at the right spot. That's not the right size. That doesn't even reach. Okay, shutting off the camera while I look for something. Apparently I only had one bolt the size that I needed to go fit between the header here. So I had no choice but to use a spacer on the outside at the current moment. It's possible I might go get a bolt that's 3 inches long. These are 3.5. And that was too long. So the brackets are lined up pretty nice here. I'll be able to get that compressor on easily, and it'll be shimmed to the proper distance for the belt. So that bolt slides in and out easily. So that's it. The only thing I didn't get accomplished today, because I couldn't find the right bolt, is the ground strap. But I will do that another day. Forgot one thing. Forgot to put the spark plugs back in. So that one looks like it's going to require a wrench on the end of that spark plug socket. I guess maybe there's a slim chance I can get an extension in there. Chance an extension might go through on this one. Slight chance an extension will go through here. In all these cases, it might be a situation where you have to put the socket on first and then click the extension into the socket. This one will work with an extension for sure. Put away some of my tools, and those are part of the tools I put away, so I gotta make a trip to the toolbox. Okay, we'll see how lucky we get on the use of the extension. I'll start with the one I know I can get the extension on. That one just makes it. This one, if it's gonna go, is gonna, nope, that's not gonna go. Let's try the last one. Nope, not gonna go there either. Gonna have to go with, put the socket on. That might not even get the socket on it. Let's try this one. Try one more time getting the socket on here. Not gonna go. So this is one of those cases where I was talking about before, where I think I used just a regular 5/8 inch box wrench on it. So let me clarify that. That's an offset box wrench. Careful here, there's a temperature sensor for the sniper system that you don't want to put too much pressure on, otherwise you might break it. But that's it. Sometimes a non-traditional tool, or non-traditional for the job you're doing, but a traditional tool will actually do the job for you. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. It's been fun.